Welcome to the Idea Leaders Self-Learning Series on the co-creation of virtual learning accessibility. This video is about advocating for the co-creation of accessibility. In this video, we will mainly cover two themes: cultivating mindset shift and the U-share approach. Cultivating a mindset shift. This section is adapted from the guidelines on fostering practices for disability inclusion at higher education institutions. You may find the full citation on screen now. You may also refer to the text version of the reference list below the video player on the web page. Mindset shift is relevant to both the physical and virtual environments for teaching and learning. We will briefly go over 4 issues related to cultivating a mindset shift. The shared rights and responsibilities of all university members. Eliminating ableism and embracing diversity. Adopting the social model of disabilities. And endorsing rights-based accessibility provisions. The shared rights and responsibilities of all university members. The process of co-creating an inclusive culture is an ongoing process. Recognize the responsibility of the university for inclusion, accessibility provision, and support of staff and students with disabilities. All university members should contribute to cultivating an inclusive culture in a university where diversity is respected. The provision and the quality of accessibility services and accommodations is a shared right and responsibility of all university members. See staff and students with disabilities as contributing university members, not as a burden. Advocate for mainstreaming disability and accessibility issues in the culture, policies, functioning, and curriculum of the university. Foster an inclusive culture by promoting mutual support, help, and respect regardless of disability status, to respect the inherent diversity of university members. Promote a well-organized consultation and involvement with university members with disabilities on an ongoing basis about inclusion within the campus. Ensure that communication, perspectives, needs, and views from all university members are mutually and highly valued, respected, and taken into consideration throughout the process. People with disabilities are the experts on their accessibility needs. We should not make any decisions on their behalf. There is a motto, "Nothing about us without us." We should always work out the required accessibility support with the university members concerned, and respect individual needs and diversity. Eliminating ableism and embracing diversity. Ableism is broadly conceptualized as a wide range of stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination against people with disabilities who are considered to be abnormal as a deviation from the norm. It is about the traditional and compulsory preference for healthy body states, which do not having any impairments, that is considered to be normative in the society. Ableism reinforces the medical model of disabilities, which emphasizes abnormality, low expectations, and a lack of autonomy for people with disabilities. We should eliminate ableism through holistic and systemic changes. The norm should shift from all people being and doing things normally, to the normality of being and doing things differently by each individual. We should respect and embrace our inherent diversity regarding the intersectionality of a wide range of personal characteristics. The type and extent of the accessibility needs of each student with disabilities are unique. Their needs may vary in different contexts, and are not solely defined by their disability or personal identity. Accommodations should be flexible and responsive to individual needs. Adopting the social model of disabilities. People are disabled as a product of the external environmental and attitudinal barriers they encounter, rather than the problems or abnormality lying with the person. Barriers can be eliminated to promote the more welcoming and inclusive participation of people with disabilities. We should recognize our society's responsibility to remove barriers that limit the lives of people with disabilities, and establish accessibility to create equal opportunities and choices for people with disabilities. This approach leads to inclusion. An inclusive campus is an accessible campus, where the presence of inherent diversity among university members with disabilities is respected and valued. Endorsing rights-based accessibility provisions. Accessibility provision has long been regarded as philanthropy and patronizing benevolence. It reinforces the charity model of disabilities and suggests that people with disabilities are victims in need of pity. Beneficiary gratitude by people with disabilities is expected. We often expect people with disabilities to adapt themselves to the barriers they encounter in the environment. However, accessibility is a facet of basic human rights to which everyone is entitled, including people with disabilities. Accessibility is a human right guaranteed internationally and domestically, and so we are under an obligation to provide accessibility services. Accessibility ensures that people with disabilities have access to the environment, information, and services on an equal basis with others. We should avoid the misuse of the love and caring approach and the unequal assumption of helping behavior. Accessibility is not merely a checklist of fixed types of support services, physical designs, or personalized accommodations, but an all-around value system that cultivates an inclusive culture at the university. In the following sections, we will introduce the U-Share approach. Our team has developed the U-Share approach, which features 6 interconnected elements. Each of us can contribute to advocating for the co-creation of accessible virtual teaching and learning. The 6 elements are: university members, which means each of us; share, habit, apply, reconceptualize, and engage. S is for share. Sharing fosters communication and mutual learning among colleagues and peers. University members are encouraged to actively share user experiences and suggestions. Spread ideas and practices and news. Share useful university and community resources. Learn from each other and show mutual support. H is for habit. Some potential methods include the following: communicate with the students to understand more about their perspectives, needs, and views. Be more aware of university's mass mails from different university units. Reading mass mails is a quick way to learn about the available resources and support that are available and relatively more specific to university members. Subscribing to RSS feeds and email newsletters allows you to stay up to date with the latest updates from NGOs, accessibility advocacy organizations, and websites of interest, such as those related to education technological accessibility, without having to go from one site to another. For further discussion about practical tips for finding relevant support resources for accessibility, or solutions to inaccessible virtual teaching and learning, you may refer to another module in this self-learning series. Other aspects of habit change are always keeping accessibility in mind as we create teaching and learning materials, and carrying out teaching and learning activities. We will talk more about these 2 points in the next part. We should always proactively consider accessibility from the beginning and throughout the entire process of designing and delivering educational materials and activities, rather than being an afterthought, regardless of whether any students approach you with request for accessibility arrangements. Do not address accessibility issues only when students request accessibility arrangements. It has been very common to handle accessibility issues by retrofitting existing teaching and learning materials or environment in response to receiving certain accessibility requests from disabled students after the course has already started. Discussion among the students concerned, instructors, and accessibility support team may be conducted while the course is ongoing during the semester. The retrofitting processes and other accessibility arrangements would probably be determined mainly based on the requests, as well as their disability types, based on some documentary proof, such as medical proof. This approach is basically reactive in nature. We may change the workflow. Another approach could be relatively more proactive in creating accessible materials and environment at the outset. A process-oriented approach would consider the diverse needs of wider groups of students under different situations, starting from the beginning as much as possible, to establish a more accessible virtual environment for more students, as many as possible at the outset, rather than mainly retrofitting the materials in response to receiving accessibility requests from some students. It aims at minimizing the chance of students encountering barriers, thus the need for students to make accessibility requests. And it aims to facilitate a more enabling experience of accessing and navigating digital environment and materials, under the presence of different access needs. An example of such a process-oriented approach is the temporal sequence of creating digital educational materials and course delivery. The stages broadly include designing the content, involving the adjustment of the presentation of content, exporting and dissemination, involving the preparation and use of alternative formats for perceiving content through different senses, using and interacting with the materials, involving the navigation and interaction with the materials. Such a process-oriented approach aims to facilitate a more user-oriented and stage-wise planning to make accessibility become an inherent part of the creation and delivery processes. When we use text authoring tools, such as Microsoft Word, very often we use the direct formatting pane to modify the text appearance as we intended. We may change this habit and use the Styles pane to format the document content. Font styles created by the Styles pane can be identified by assistive technologies such as screen readers. With properly formatted styles and settings, a number of accessibility tags can be preserved in the PDF exported from Microsoft Word. However, font styles created by the direct formatting pane cannot serve these purposes. A is for apply. We apply accessibility, just like H for habit. Accessibility arrangement is an ongoing process. Although there are fundamental domains of accessibility practices, we should always take the diversity of user needs and situational contexts into consideration. To begin with, we do our best to always apply accessibility from the beginning and throughout the process of designing and delivering educational materials and activities, rather than considering it an afterthought, regardless of whether students approach you with requests for accessibility arrangements. Applying accessibility helps foster equal opportunities to meaningfully engage in educational materials and activities to achieve learning goals. Overall, it aims to maximize the effectiveness of teaching and learning. Overall, sessions and materials that are accessible to people with disabilities are also inclusive to many audiences. It would also be relatively easier and time-saving to modify materials that are somewhat accessible than to try to convert inaccessible materials to become more accessible. We would encourage you to refer to the other modules in this self-learning video series for more demonstration for your reference. We also encourage you to go to the Virtual Learning Accessibility Toolkit developed by our team for further guidelines on document accessibility and multimedia accessibility. Regarding carrying out teaching and learning activities with accessibility in mind, one very relevant example is making live streaming sessions for classes and meetings more accessible. There are various stages, such as pre-session preparation, housekeeping at the beginning, within-session engagement, and post-session follow-up. There are many issues that we may consider to enhance accessibility at different stages of the live streaming session. For example, screen sharing is a common part of the whole process of delivery of live streaming sessions. There are different forms of screen sharing, such as real-time screen sharing through live streaming platforms, screen recording as video, and screenshot images. For further discussion about practical tips for enhancing accessibility of screen sharing, you may refer to another module in this self-learning series. It would be useful to create and use templates to promote the accessibility of teaching and learning materials. Providing templates that are designed with accessibility in mind could serve various purposes. To raise awareness of accessible design. To facilitate content authors who are relatively new to accessibility practices to make commonly used document more accessible. Speed up the process as much as possible. Content authors can also learn from the template design and develop the habit of practicing accessible designs. To ensure a unified layout that promotes digital accessibility and responsiveness. Templates would be particularly useful for document consistency, copy editing, and branding, as well as for any repetitively used materials with similar formats, such as course outlines. To serve as a training tool, we can make use of templates to demonstrate the feasibility of different accessibility design practices and actionable tips by providing basic instructions on how to customize the templates to diverse types of teaching materials. Moreover, creating documents that are born accessible, that means they are accessible as you create them, would help minimize the amount of time, efforts, and costs of remediation. We can make use of these templates to help promote accessibility in various ways. For example, we can learn from the accessible design practices demonstrated in the templates. Develop the habit of designing materials with accessibility in mind. Invite fellow colleagues, students, peers, to try out and make use from the templates. And we can report any barriers or ideas to template creators for continual improvement. As an example, you may download the PowerPoint template created by our team and a Microsoft Word document template in the form of a course outline created by our team for reference. You may refer to the video on creating and using templates in our self-learning series to go through these ideas in greater detail. When we create teaching and learning materials, sometimes we need to select different e-learning tools. It is important to consider the accessibility of the tools when making that selection. For example, does it work with assistive technologies such as screen readers, screen magnifiers, and braille readers? It may be difficult, if not impossible, to find a tool that is fully accessible. However, failure on any aspect of accessibility means that there are inaccessible features that need to be addressed. Even if you discover that the tool has inaccessible features, that does not necessarily mean that you must not use that tool. Sometimes, it may be possible to think of workarounds to help solve the problems. We suggest 13 general guiding questions regarding the selection of e-learning tools from the accessibility perspective. We hope the list of guiding questions will facilitate your information search and selection process. We also hope these guiding questions will be useful to people in different roles in different situations involving virtual teaching and learning. You may go to the video on accessibility considerations in selecting e-learning learning tools in our self-learning series to visit the 13 general guiding questions in greater detail. Basic checking of your teaching materials may help you spot major accessibility issues. It may even give you ideas about the potential modifications, workarounds, or support resources required. A simpler step to start with is to make use of the built-in accessibility checkers in different kinds of authoring tools to fix potential issues. The first example is the built-in accessibility checker in Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, and Excel. To run the built-in checker, simply go to the Review tab, then select the command, Check Accessibility. The second example is the built-in accessibility checker in Adobe Acrobat for PDF documents. To perform the accessibility full check, using this built-in accessibility checker, go to Tools, Accessibility, Full Check. The Accessibility Checker Options dialog pane opens. After selecting your preferred settings, select Start Checking to begin the accessibility check. The next example is the built-in accessibility checker in Qualtrics. This checker can automatically detect some potential inaccessible designs of the survey and provide suggestions for fixing the potentially problematic areas. To run this checker in Qualtrics, go to Survey, Tools, Review, check Survey Accessibility. The Accessibility (WCAG) section will list out some potential accessibility issues in the survey design and suggested solutions. You are encouraged to refer to other modules in this self-learning series on the use of the built-in accessibility checker in the respective authoring tools in greater detail. One of the limitations of these built-in accessibility checkers is that they cannot tell whether the reading order is logical. Manual checking is required and essential. Therefore, it is good that we do a basic check of whether the reading order of teaching and learning materials accessed by different methods is logical, as intended, and compatible. Check the visual display order. Check the reading order of assistive technologies, such as screen readers. Check the keyboard navigation order accessed by keyboard users, such as the Tab key, Shift key, and the arrow keys. It is expected that your experience would not necessarily be the same as those of regular and experienced users of assistive technologies. However, such testing will help you spot major accessibility issues in your materials, such as improper reading order of the document content, missing alternative text for graphics, or an improper heading structure. This will help you figure out the potential modifications required, or give you ideas about the appropriate methods to use, to look for additional support resources or solutions. To know more about screen readers, we highly encourage you to go to the video on the Introduction to Reading Word Documents and PDF Documents Using Screen Readers in this self-learning series. R is for Reconceptualize. To cultivate a mindset shift as an ongoing process in the long run. To reconceptualize disability, accessibility needs, and accessibility practice. To reform the approaches and scope of accessibility support for a wider group of students to better cater for their diverse needs. Regarding cultivating mindset shift, we have previously discussed 4 issues. The shared rights and responsibilities of all university members. Eliminating ableism and embracing diversity. Adopting the social model of disabilities, and endorsing rights-based accessibility provisions. To demystify 8 misconceptions about disability, accessibility needs, and accessibility support in relation to teaching and learning, you may refer to the module on demystifying misconceptions in this self-learning series. For a more detailed discussion and examples of design principles and assistive tools that might enhance accessibility of creating and using digital materials for teaching and learning, you can go to the video on design principles and assistive tools in our self-learning series. To broaden your understanding of examples of experiences, barriers, and accessibility needs of people with disabilities, as well as the potential strategies, tools, and techniques that could better cater to their diverse learning needs and accessibility needs regarding virtual teaching and learning, you may refer to the module on disabilities and accessibility needs in this self-learning series. It mainly covers people with cognitive disabilities, learning disabilities, and/or neurological disabilities, deaf people or hard of hearing people, people with physical disabilities, people with speech disabilities, and people with visual impairments, as illustrative examples. E is for engage. The more university members are aware of the importance of accessibility and actual accessibility practices from their fellow university members, the more likely it is that accessibility will be a higher priority, which could foster inclusion in higher education. To engage in advocating for co-creation of accessibility, we may proactively participate in university events that promote accessibility awareness. Provide constructive feedback to fellow colleagues, students, and peers. Encourage fellow colleagues, students, and peers to practice accessibility. When we communicate accessibility issues with university members, avoid only giving what and how feedback. Avoid requesting many changes at one time. Avoid giving large amounts of non-specific information in the first place. Do not deliver feedback in a strict tone, and do not convey feedback as if you are complaining. Here is a scenario.
Thanks for preparing the slides. Everything looks great. Just one point. Please change the colors and annotations for the pie chart.
Color contrast. Any specific colors?
You can refer to this digital accessibility guidebook for ideas.
Okay, I'll try to figure it out, but I'm not sure if I can make it correctly.
The colleague may indeed wonder.
Oh, why do we bother to consider accessibility?
To improve, we may consider and do our best with the following approaches. Giving constructive feedback with what, how, and most importantly, why, ideas. Bit by bit, starting with bite-sized information and tasks. Providing specific resources for references, if any. Delivering feedback in a friendly and encouraging tone. Providing positive feedback. Acknowledging those who make an effort to practice accessibility. In this way, the conversation could go as follows.
Thanks for preparing the slides. All looks great. Just one suggestion. Shall we change the colors and annotations for the charts to make it more accessible?
More accessible?
It would be great to have a color combination with sufficient color contrast.
A color contrast?
Yes, for better color contrast for accessibility. Here is an example of a chart with accessible annotations. For example, there are multiple visual cues: colors, borders, text. Without sufficient color contrast, the charts would be inaccessible to some students particularly students who are colorblind and students with visual impairments.
Oh, I see. But there seem to be no students with visual impairment in the class.
Yes, but it is also important for other students. Some students may want to print out course materials as handouts in black and white. So, we need to make sure the colored diagrams are properly displayed in grayscale. We may make use of this app to check the color contrast and look for appropriate combinations. Let me show you how it works. You may also refer to Chapter 5 of this Digital Accessibility Guidebook for other examples. This guidebook illustrates many methods to create accessible documents for teaching and learning. I highly recommend to you. Try it out in the future.
Sure, I'll try it. Thanks for the great reminder and resources.
The colleague now thinks that they will try these approaches in the future as well. Overall, this type of feedback may make the communication process more comfortable and productive. The Accessibility Reminder function in Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, and Excel is an add-in that lets you insert accessibility-related reminder comments into documents with tips and links to guidelines and training resources to notify the document authors and contributors of accessibility issues. To install the Accessibility Reminder in Word, Excel, or PowerPoint, go to the Insert tab, Add-ins, Get Add-ins. On the Store tab, search for Accessibility Reminder and then select Add. Select Continue to accept the terms and privacy policy. The Accessibility Reminder tab will appear in the ribbon. In Word, the Accessibility Reminder will be added in comments. In Excel, the Accessibility Reminder will be added in comments as well. In PowerPoint, the Accessibility Reminder will be added as a separate slide at the beginning of the presentation. Overall, according to Microsoft, this function aims to spread awareness of accessibility issues and encourage use of the accessibility checker. The goal is to create a sense of urgency around accessibility, a sense of community and shared accountability, as well as greater awareness of and education about accessibility best practices. Another way to engage in advocating for co-creation of accessibility is to communicate accessibility issues and collaborate with the community. Communicating with vendors and developers of e-learning materials on accessibility issues. The content of this section is adapted from the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C, Web Accessibility Initiative, WAI, document on contacting organizations about inaccessible websites. You may find the full citation on screen now. You may also refer to the text version of the reference list below the video player on the web page. Why do we bother to contact organizations about inaccessible educational materials? Your feedback to organizations, such as publishers and educational technology developers, can help them improve the accessibility of their e-learning materials and tools. This would benefit not only you and your students, but also the organization itself and many other people who use those materials and tools for e-learning. Companies have many priorities for changes and improvements. The more an organization hears about accessibility from the people who use their products, the more likely it is that accessibility will become a higher priority. Positive feedback is useful. So is critical feedback. To communicate with vendors and developers, try the following. First, consider your approach. Then, identify key contacts. Describe the accessibility issues clearly. Include sources for more information. Request a reply. And follow up as needed. Consider your approach. Your tone in emails, phone calls, and other communications influences how people react and respond. Keep in mind that there are different reasons why some products are not accessible. Some vendors and developers may not know about accessibility or how to make products such as e-learning tools more accessible. Some may have just begun to learn about accessibility and are trying to make their products accessible. And some vendors and developers may choose not to make their products accessible. Often, it is best, when you first contact an organization, to assume that they do not know about the accessibility barriers to their products such as e-learning tools. You may adjust your approach based on their response and what you learn about the organization's position on accessibility. Their response can help you choose the follow-up actions that are likely to be the most effective. Consider asking colleagues, students, and advocacy groups for help understanding the problem you are observing and communicating it to the vendors and developers. For example, the issue may be related to either the product or the assistive technologies you are using. Acknowledge and encourage organizations that make an effort to be accessible. Positive feedback can motivate individuals and organizations. It can encourage other vendors and developers to invest in virtual learning accessibility. Identify key contacts. Try to look for links on their website such as the following: accessibility, contact us, feedback, and comments, as well as help, support, customer service, and FAQ, frequently asked questions. Some links will be email addresses, some will go to online forms, and some will provide other ways to contact the organization. Describe the accessibility issues clearly. This will help the organization find and fix the issues. Make use of the 5W1H framework. Describe who, where, what, why, when, and how that are related to the issues. About the who, it can be about your role, such as an instructional designer. Your disabilities, if any, depending on whether you feel comfortable to disclose, and or whether this is relevant to the accessibility issues being reported. About the where, for example, the where can be any specific sections, components, functions, or commands of the e-learning materials and tools. For particular web pages, include the URL. The what and why, referring to your detailed description of the inaccessibility issues. Provide details about what you were trying to do and why it was difficult or impossible to do it. Attach a screenshot or screen recording of the issues, if any. The when usually refers to when you used the product. Software, programs, and operating systems are constantly and rapidly developing along with changing accessibility functions. Therefore, it is important to provide the date or month and the year as well. The how may include any ideas how they can improve, how to help you, and how to contact for further information and follow-up. Besides making use of the 5W1H framework, remember to identify the devices, operating system, browser software, settings, assistive technology and devices, and conditions. Attach a screenshot or screen recording of the issues, if any. The following are 4 examples of such a description. Example 1, involving the keyboard control of an ebook reader.
While the ebook reader can be controlled by a mouse, trackpad, or touchscreen mode, I cannot navigate or input commands using the keyboard alone. There is no keyboard focus. To be specific, I use the Tab key, Shift key, arrow keys, and Enter key. I access the reader using MacBook Pro, macOS Ventura 13.1, and Google Chrome version 109.0.5414.119. Because of mobility disability, I can only use the keyboard, and not a mouse, trackpad, or touchscreen mode. I would be grateful if the keyboard control accessibility could be improved soon. Please refer to the attached screen recording of my keyboard navigation within the reader for your reference. It was taken this month, February 2023.
Example 2, involving the color annotation of a gamification tool.
When I used the app to administer quizzes during my online lectures, 2 students with visual impairments indicated that it was very hard to differentiate the option boxes and read the text in those boxes. The incident happened this month, February 2023. The students said they could not easily differentiate the different colors. The color contrast between the background color and the text color was not sufficient. I would be grateful if multiple visual cues could be used to indicate the different option boxes.
Example 3, involving the lack of alternative text for images of an ebook.
I am a screen reader user. Screen readers cannot read images. They read aloud the alt text of the images. The images on this page are all missing alt text. For example, I hear image 055. GIF, which my classmates said was an image of the gel electrophoresis process. My screen reader is NVDA, running on Windows 10 on a notebook computer with Google Chrome. I would be grateful if alt texts could be added soon. For your reference, please refer to the attached screen recording of how the screen readers read the images aloud. It was taken this month, February 2023.
Example 4, involving the lack of captions for video tutorials.
I was told that there are good video tutorials on your website. However, I cannot get much information from the videos because I can't hear them. The videos are missing captions. I browsed the website this month, February 2023. I would be grateful if captions could be added soon.
Include sources for more information. Help the organization understand the accessibility issues and potential solutions. Sometimes, the organization does not have expertise in accessibility. It may not understand your feedback. Useful examples are the database, guidelines, and standards published by the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C, Web Accessibility Initiative, WAI. They are essential and useful references for developers of e-learning tools and materials. The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG, is an international standard that documents how to make web content and its associated electronic information and communication and multimedia materials more accessible to people with disabilities. Mobile Accessibility Guidance summarizes essential standards and strategies that make web content more accessible to people with disabilities when they are using mobile devices, such as mobile phones, tablets, and wearables, such as smartwatches. Cognitive Accessibility Guidance provides examples of design rationale, patterns, and practical tips on how to make web content more accessible to people with cognitive and learning disabilities. The Authoring Tool Accessibility Guidelines, ATAG, document how to make authoring tools themselves accessible so that people with disabilities can use the tools to create web content. They also show how users of the authoring tools create accessible web content. The User Agent Accessibility Guidelines, UAAG, explain how to make user agents accessible to people with disabilities. Request a reply. Invite the organization to reply to you. Depending on the organization's culture, policies, and internal systems, some possible outcomes are as follows. You might get a quick response, or it might take longer to hear back. You might get an automatic reply that the organization received your feedback. The organization may follow up later with a direct reply to your issue. The organization may or may not fix the problem, and it may not notify you. Note that some accessibility issues might be related to your browser or assistive technology settings. Consider seeking information about how to customize your device settings for an optimal user experience. Follow-up is needed. Keep records of all communications for possible follow-up. Sometimes, the organization will not have expertise in accessibility. It may not understand your feedback. The organization might need more information from you to help them diagnose and fix the issues. Be ready for follow-up. Concluding remarks. To summarize, in this video, we have briefly introduced 4 domains in cultivating mindset shift, as well as the U-share approach, which could contribute to advocating for the co-creation of accessible virtual teaching and learning. We believe all of these elements are interrelated and mutually reinforce each other. The process of co-creating an inclusive culture is an ongoing process, and it will take time. All university members should contribute to cultivating an inclusive culture in a university where diversity is respected. Disclaimer.
This video does not contain any business promotion elements. Software, programs, and operating systems are constantly and rapidly developing along with changing accessibility functions. Statements in this video about the functions of any software, programs, and operating systems may no longer represent the current status. The recommended practices in this video are not exhaustive or the best solutions for each situation. It is possible that the hyperlinks of the cited resources in this video might be edited or removed by the corresponding contributor after publication of this video.
You may find the list of references on screen now. You may also refer to the text version of the reference list below the video player on the web page. Acknowledgement. This project is funded by the UGC Special Grant for Strategic Development of Virtual Teaching and Learning. The first author, Gloria Ma, would like to acknowledge the support of the postdoctoral fellowship scheme offered by the Research Grants Council of Hong Kong. This work is licensed under Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 4.0 International. To cite this video, please follow the suggested citation on screen now. You may also refer to the text version of the suggested citation below the video player on the web page. For more guidelines on creating accessible digital educational materials and virtual learning environments, please refer to our Virtual Learning Accessibility Toolkit at https://vlaccessibilitytoolkit.hku.hk or download the full text in PDF from HKU Data Repository. You may scan the QR code on screen now to visit the database. You may also download the set of cheat sheets for quick reference and sharing. You are highly encouraged to watch the other videos in this IDEA Leaders Self-Learning series to enrich the knowledge of the basic concepts, practical tips, and resources of enhancing the accessibility of virtual teaching and learning. Here comes to the end of this video. Thank you for watching. Let's begin our journey towards co-creating accessible virtual teaching and learning.